Ephesians 4, verse 3, says, maintain the unity. We don't have to create the unity. We don't have to create koinonia between one another or between races, people groups. It's been done for us. So I want to summarize. We need to have a way to keep returning to the fact that this is a spiritual reality. We need that in the middle of the night when you're really irritated. Have you ever had a relationship where you start avoiding the person? We have an acronym that's going to help this plant in our hearts. And it spells out the word Christ, because Christ is in the center. And when Christ is in the center, the orbits work. They all stay. The magnetic pull of the sun, the protection, it all works. What would happen if one of those planets decided to pop out and be the center for a little bit? I need to have some circumstances work out around me. I need to have some people cooperate with my orbit. Has anybody ever tried to make people or circumstances work around you? Parents? How does that go? You have a plan for the day, here it is, operate around. I don't think so. It's not human nature, right? But it's so crucial to see the only way this works is if we keep Christ the center. Then we affect one another in beautiful ways that he's designed. But as soon as we get fearful, that isn't working very well, and we pull out and try to make things happen, chaos, bumping all into each other. John Stott said, the essence of sin is substituting ourselves for God, while the essence of salvation is substituting himself for us. Having ourselves in the center, it not only does not work, but it displaces God. How does that work? How does that go? You can think of it in a number of ways. It's like our ego. I have this fun saying to myself, not everything has to go through your ego, Shelley. It's so true. And you guys, a lot of peace comes. When I'm in the orbit, when I can really stay in that magnetic pull and that beautiful peace, it's not that circumstances work out, right? They don't. We still have very hard things. Paul, I've been beaten, shipwrecked, starved, all these things, but he was okay because he knew he was in the orbit. But his life was affecting other people in the orbit just because he was staying on task. Like sometimes even Jesus said, I want to go there to Jerusalem, and the disciples said, you're going to get killed. He said, yeah, but that's my orbit. That's what I'm called to do. H, humility. Okay, moving right along. When we realize he's in the center and we're in this orbit, everything is a gift. I can't look at you and say, I think you really need to start doing a little bit more of that or a little bit less of that. That's me, again, inserting myself there. It's just stay in our orbit, keeping him the sun. I'm not talking about being a doormat. This isn't when you're in Jesus, that means you let everybody walk all over you. That isn't wisdom. That's not how he leads. When we're in his order, he's giving us wisdom of good choices. So we have boundaries that he gives us. If we try to make up our own boundaries and try to fix things in our families in all sorts of ways, we get it wrong. Not 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10. But when we have this humility, you guys, we can forgive. Because we have the power of the Son coming into us. Forgiveness is divine. We can go quite a ways to forgiveness sometimes. What is somebody we like? Yeah, you blew it. Yeah, I can understand. But what if it's somebody that's just really evil, really harmful? That's forgiveness motivated and kept by the Son. So humility. When I am in that orbit, I don't have to protect myself. I don't have to promote myself, and I don't have to perfect myself. The humility of traveling, having him as the center, takes away a lot, doesn't it? Okay, how are we all doing? Good, good. Our relationship. Now, we touched on this a little bit because we're connected. And as I said, the planets influence one another. This is huge. When I came to know the Lord, I was told that my sins were forgiven. I had belonging in him. And he loved me unconditionally. And that was phenomenal relief. But it was a concept for a long time. It sounds good. It was a concept for a long time. Do you want to know when it moved from a concept to an experience? I absolutely blew it. Not just one time, many times. Mark shared with you before, after we were married, we had these great high hopes of traveling and speaking and all these wonderful things. And then my health crashed. I couldn't do the simplest thing. I couldn't cook. I couldn't do the accounting at the church. I couldn't do the simplest thing. And we had to move down to the States here because it was too hard, too harsh up in the cold north. I remember one time, the most wonderful thing you've ever said to me is I was feeling so insecure, and I was always striving and trying to earn your love, earn that place. And you said, if I haven't left you by now, what makes you think I'm going to? When you think about it, that's amazing. That's amazing. That's when it went from a concept, God's unconditional love that I don't have to earn, it went from a concept to a reality. And do you know what happened then? It went from a reality to me passing it on to others. Because when I was trying to earn my way and earn my self-respect and all these kind of things, I was expecting you to as well, right? How does that work for relationships? How do you feel in a relationship when somebody's expecting something of you? I'll take the next train, thanks. This is how God heals us. And we're all, show me how to never fight, never upset one another. It's by design. We're going to upset one another because then we can forgive one another, and then his love becomes a reality. Don't worry about the mistakes. Don't worry about the broken things. Fix them. Fix them. Go and say, hey, I really blew it yesterday. I was really judgmental. I've been avoiding you. I've been assuming. I've been criticizing. I've been doing all these things. Forgive me. And then that gives the person a connection, and healing comes. Healing flows through breaks and fixes, and we have to experience. How many of you have had a hard relationship that's been brought together again? Isn't that amazing? Does that give you faith for the next hard relationship you walk into? Yeah, okay. Dr. Todd Hall has a great book. It's called The Connected Life. And in it he says, we are loved into loving. Think about that. When we receive love, we can give it out. And again, it's got to go from a concept. I love, Linnea, you were in our Connect group, and you shared your life with us. We got to go through some of the iterations of development. You shared. It was vulnerable. But I'm sure it wasn't always comfortable. But are you glad you did? You are so beautiful. You were beautiful the day you came a couple years ago, and you're beautiful now. We see more of Jesus, and it's a beautiful thing to behold. But it came through vulnerability, right? If you had come and not shared anything, how could the healing get in there? So it's messy, you guys. It's really messy. Take my word for it. Mark and I are counselors. It's very messy. Okay, shared identity. When we think about self-esteem and our identity, the only thing the world has to offer us is to get better at something. You're feeling is that a word? Unconfident? Insecure, it is now. Thank you, Miss Brenda. Your only choice in the world is to beef yourself up, right? But what happens is when you get your confidence built up, you're looking down on someone else. And then someone comes along that's even better than how you've built yourself up, and now you've got to build yourself up more. It's a trap. It's a trap from the enemy. It's from the pit of hell. We were never designed to get our own esteem. That's putting ourselves in the middle and having our circumstances and our skills and everything around building us up. We're meant to have him. This is what we have. We have fellowship together. We have roles. You're the head of the house. But it's this beautiful coming together. You always take my opinion. You always listen to me. We're co-workers together. Okay, so our worth is not based on self-confidence or personal esteem. It's based in him. We're a new creation. This doesn't happen unless we see him. And it isn't that all of a sudden we pop out of orbit. No. The spiritual reality is you are in orbit. Jesus is the center of your life, whether you're cooperating with that or not. Your experience of it's going to change. But he said, no one can snatch you out of my hands. So I don't want you to feel insecure that, oh, am I in orbit or I had this selfish moment. No. That's the spiritual reality. We can always go back to it. Maintain that. Reckon yourselves dead. Because our identity is established as a new creation, everything we have from God, when we are thinking like this, renewing our mind, we don't judge one another. Shared identity. Does that sound a little better than sometimes the striving? Okay, we're almost done. Sacrificial, costly love. Okay, this is where we're going to get a little dicey, because we're going to talk about that person you don't get along with that's really different than you. Anybody have one? Oh, Dan, you're not supposed to point. Okay, here's the thing. Mark and I'll just use this example. Mark wants people to make sense. He wants me to make sense. When I felt like I had to watch Law and Order every single day when we were first married, so I would know how to present an opinion. Because I'd start to talk, and I'd get these questions bulleted at me, like an interrogation. I am serious, you guys. I'm not kidding. A lot has been rubbed off of Mark because I'm his sandpaper. I did not make sense. I still don't make sense. I don't think I'll ever make sense. And you know what? I don't expect to make sense. That's why I've had 24 at-risk teenagers live in my home. And people said, oh, how did you do with it? They lied, they stole. I wouldn't expect anything less. Really? When you've been traumatized and you're living in survival mode? So I was never surprised. I never had to scratch my head and say, why did they just do that? One look in my heart, I know why they did that. We're messed up. Okay, but Mark, and probably several of you, when someone comes to you and they don't make sense, you keep trying to figure them out. And then you get a little annoyed. And then you start to avoid. So we have these two extremes. Some people are just like, make some sense. And other people are, get some sensitivity. And everywhere in between. Enough said? We get that? It's costly. But we can look at what's in common. So our last one, truth. This is huge. Our focus is what we have in common. It helps us grow. And when we focus on these truths, we see Christ at the center. The essence of koinonia. We recognize that our shared identity is what we look at, not at what divides us. So we're going to close with a time of focus on truth. Because through this sharing, maybe you've seen places where you're trying to protect yourself. You've started avoiding, assuming, alienating. You've even gotten aggressive. Maybe you've seen places where You're trying to promote yourself to be seen? Or you're trying to conceal your faults? Or maybe you're just trying to perfect yourself and you're striving so hard to be good, you're just plain exhausted. So these things come, you guys. But we're not left to focus on that. Because if we focus on our faults, we're putting ourselves back in the center. Even though it might be for good purpose, I want to fix myself, I want to get better, you're still putting yourself in the center. So we're going to have a time of focusing on Jesus.